Hello everyone, this is Jonathan. I'm casting a gold level game here. I am rebuilding my profile. In this particular case, I am doing a Archon Immortal Zealot build. Usually when facing Protoss, I tend to bypass Adepts and go straight to Stalkers at the very beginning. And then I might build the Sentries to hallucinate some Phoenixes out to hit them up. So this is a 115 APM game. And a pretty good example of a decent build against Protoss. My ZVP could be a lot better, I gotta admit. So this is again an example of a PvP, or Protoss versus Protoss. Go ahead and load this up. All right, so let me go ahead and enable some structures here to see where everybody's at. So I'll start out with a standard focus on probes build. Nothing too fancy. Usually like to start with your first pylon there, immediately start building more probes. I'll then go straight to a gateway. I start mapping my hotkey locations. I tend to use those when I'm transferring my probes mainly, and also to quickly see when I'm being attacked by something. So again, I go for pylon about 15, I'll go for gateway around 16, and then I'll immediately go for refinery or assimilator at 17. So naturally, first thing I see when I see a probe is I start thinking that they're going to build a forge and try to cannon rush me, but I can see that he's just kind of messing around with me, so I just continue with my build and try to chase him around a bit, see where he goes. I have decided not to scout this Protoss. I'll probably go for the hallucinated Phoenix as soon as I can. I did chrono boost my Nexus just one time, just so that I can get an initial boost to probes, and that way I don't cap myself out too fast. So really just going for a straight Nexus push here. And then standard cybernetics core. So I'll immediately chrono boost my Nexus, build another refinery or assimilator, and then I'll build another pylon so that way I don't cap myself out. I do happen to cap just a little bit out here, but I'm always spending. Checking my other Nexus to see if it's built yet, and then I'm continuously building probes using that Q key if I'm using the grid build today. Transfer all my probes to the assimilator, immediately start on warp gate, and then try to boost out. Well, usually I'd boost out a stalker, but in this case I didn't feel like I needed to. And then I'll go for 2 additional warp gates. Oh, there'll be warp gates eventually. And then I start transferring my probes over to the second Nexus and start boosting out more probes out of the Nexi, I should say. So I still managed to get that probe walking around my base. I don't know why he was doing that. It was completely useless, so I'm going to go ahead and take it out. And then I just completely destroyed his ability to see what I'm doing now, and I can start focusing on building more units, and you won't know what my actual build order is. So generally I really don't like to telegraph that I'm going to be going Archon and Zealot. So right now he probably thinks I'm going for a standard all-in Stalker, and well, not all-in, but a standard Stalker Immortal build, since he might have seen the actual robotics facility there.
I'm here.
So immediately start building more Stalkers now that I've got my gateways up and running. And a good rule of thumb here, which I don't really follow very well in this game just because I'm kind of rushing out units, is to continuously build pylon. Once you have a pylon built, you build another one, and then you just keep going until you reach your 200 cap limit. So now he's going to try to trick me with these Adepts going into my base, so I hit him at the top, and then I have some other units at the bottom go after the Adepts. So he doesn't really get a lot of probes here, but it does keep him focused on this rather than back at home. So I'm definitely going for a long range or a long run macro build to where I will overwhelm my opponent very easily. That's generally the idea. You just build more stuff than your opponent and you tend to win. So that goes for buildings too. I like putting a lot of gateways. I usually only focus on one robo. I don't ever go any further than that because I don't like to focus too much on immortals. Usually 5 or 6 immortals against a Protoss player is a pretty good start out. And then I might transition to Stargate later on if I lose my opening units and I completely destroy his army. But if I do have units left, I tend to just commit to whatever units I got and build more of the same ones. So I'm going for double forge. I usually try to go for +1 armor, +1 shield to maximize those Archons. But I'm sorry, +1 attack, +1 shield. I think that's what I do in this build here. Start building more stalkers. And I probably should start building that additional simulator. He starts building more, or attacking me with more adepts. Not a very good strategy. I'm sure he sends one in there, but it's just one, so I just let it go. And a completely wasted unit that he committed to. So it's around this point that I start thinking about hallucinating those phoenixes. Let's see what we're up against. What I'm looking for is to make sure my opponent didn't actually go Stargate, because that's not what my build counters. So I'm hoping to see a lot of stalkers. I'm hoping to see a lot of adepts, just real cheap units that he's trying to overwhelm me with. Even immortals are okay. Doesn't bother me one bit because my zealots will pretty much destroy any immortals that come in the way. So yep, I do see what I like to see, and that's a lot of stalkers, no Stargates whatsoever, and 1 robo on the top left corner. So I take my hallucinated phoenix. It doesn't escape, but I got what I needed to see out of my opponent. So now I'm going to go ahead and build my High Templar, or my Templar archives there. Because now I don't have to worry about building Stargates, so very good way to spot that and make sure I don't waste any income there. If I did see Stargates, I could focus on building even more Stargates than my opponent. And then I'm going to load up on gateways, so I can build a lot more than he does, since I have a lot of economy. I did not see a 3rd base. I already took my 3rd base, so I'm already in a pretty good position. Not that I can see my enemy's mineral count during the game, but as you can see, I'm spending my money quick. That's really the key to this, is just spending as soon as you have it. Mineral field depleted. A lot of the repetition is just knowing what your build order is going to be. You look at the clock, you look at the pylons. If you hover your mouse over the pylon count at the top right up here, it'll tell you exactly how many probes that you have. And usually you want to shoot for about 70 to 74 probes by 8-minute counter. But of course, since I got attacked, I usually don't. I'm not really that fast right now. So I figure I'm sensing an attack coming probably pretty soon, so I think I just moved my army out. And now I can start pushing out, forcing out units to go into the late game. So generally I like to play the AI a lot, and my goal is to reach 200 cap by 10 minutes and 30 seconds. 10 minutes is usually what you see for diamond players, in my experience. So I sent out another hallucinated phoenix to find out where his army is and to make sure that he maintained the same consistency in his army. And again, I'm looking for lots of stalkers and lots of maybe zealots and immortals, which I do see. He did build a shield battery, doesn't bother me one bit, and I'm going to start forcing out some zealots to deal with those stalkers. So the general idea is you want to lead with the Archons, and the zealots will actually push right in between them. So that way, while your army, or while their army is focusing on your Archons, your zealots are actually pounding them from the front line. So shouldn't be getting too many hits off on the Archons. I am definitely a lot faster at building than he is based on the supply count. I'm at 133. I did cap out at this point, which is not good, but I quickly build more pylons to get me back up to speed. And around this point, I probably should be taking a 4th Nexus to keep up my supply and keep up my mineral count and gas. And there we go, building some more lovely Archons. If I could make another decision, I probably would have focused more on also my upgrades. I think at the end of this, I probably didn't end up with a very high upgrade count. Probably did +2 weapons, +2 armor, maybe +3 weapons, which definitely increases the effectiveness of your army. Alright, I'm shooting up to about 166 units now. Building more probes. Building more army. And then I eventually like to push out once I get my warp prism, which allows me to build a lot more units. And we already have an attack. So as you can see, there come the Zealots to become my front line. Sometimes they get stuck in between my army. Now, he made a huge mistake by boosting his Stalkers in the middle of my army. He would have had a better position if he had just left them where they're at. My Stalkers were basically stuck behind the Archons. Now, that's a problem with the Archons. They're really big units. They like to basically take up a lot of space, and your Zealots can't be used really until an Archon or 2 die, which is not a very good position to be in. So I go ahead and I get my Warp Prism out, and I just phase in a bunch of stuff, and I just immediately start pushing into his army. And this is a very good position to be in. Those Zealots are destroying all the units while the Archons are hitting from long range, or longer range, and the Immortals are right behind the Archons, so they can't get hit. So I always bring an Observer, just because you never know if they're going to try to go Dark Templar and you can't see them unless you have an Observer. So, got the Zealots pushed up at the top. As you can see, the Stalkers are focusing on the Zealots, which is a very cheap unit. All your expensive units are hitting the Stalkers at the top. And completely, I think he was trying to block me in with the what are they called? Yeah, he was trying to block me in with the sentries. Didn't work very well in his favor. And at this point, yeah, he calls GG. There's not really much he can do. I've completely wrecked his entire army. And that's the end of it. So this is a pretty successful Archon Zealot build. I know I had Stalkers in for effect, but overall the key units here are definitely the Zealots, the Archons, and the Immortals from the back end to basically hammer any other heavy units that they can. They're pretty powerful units. Thanks for watching. Hope you learned something.